Hey guys, Scott and Vanessa Martindale here with Blended Kingdom Families. At BKF, we believe now is the time to change the modern day interpretation of the blended family.
Absolutely, you guys. As a blended family ourselves, God laid it on our hearts to build a ministry that helps support blended families by equipping your marriage, uniting the family unit, and igniting your faith. Our mission is that you would be touched by God and experience His goodness through this ministry, that your family would have practical skills, resources, and tools to help you live that abundant blended life. Build up your confidence.
Guys, thank y'all so much for joining us. Scott and Vanessa Martindale here with Blended Kingdom Families, and we are so excited to bring you a new topic. We're going to be talking about an extremely powerful feeling today. And I know you guys may experience feelings on a lot of different levels. You'll experience joy, you'll experience love, you'll experience fear, you'll experience all these things. But one thing as blended families, and especially the biological parent of a blended family, one of the feelings that we have heard over and over again is guilt.
Yes.
It's an overwhelming feeling that kind of surfaces at all different times, usually by a prompt or something that you'll see or something maybe your child will say to you, but you'll feel this overwhelming feeling of guilt, like you're the reason that this is going on. Your decisions had dictated what the child is feeling, even years later.
Sure.
Decades later.
Yeah.
So as a blended family and as a biological parent in the blended family, Vanessa, how have you seen this? How have you seen this in our own lives, and how have you felt about this over the years?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a very real feeling, and it's something that it comes up a lot, more than I'd like to say that it does. But you know, a prime example is this last week. You know, our oldest son and we were in the car together, and you know, I just asked him, and I was like, son, you know, what's on your heart? You know, what is God talking to you about? And he said, you know, Mom, I'm not doing really good. And I was like, well, what's going on? And he said, why did God have to give me divorced parents?
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, we've been a blended family for 7 years. We've walked through forgiveness. We've walked through all of those things, but it's still there. And I just, in that moment, you know, it kind of took my breath away. And of course, that instant mom guilt of my actions are what is causing him to feel this way. And, you know, in that moment, I chose to explain to him, you know, God did not make your parents divorce. You know, that was something that your dad and I caused. And it was an opportunity for me to extend, ask for forgiveness and explain biblically, you know, Michael, this is not something that God caused, but He is making good in our family out of that situation.
And it's really interesting. Our son is 14, so he's coming up with a little bit more mature thoughts, and he's asking for more mature questions, and he's even relating it to a biblical sense.
Sure.
And that may be a real opportunity that you have to explain that or to ask for forgiveness. But there are other ways, maybe even in younger children, that you may not. You may not understand that the guilt is what's going on here.
Right.
And I think children, we have to be careful with this because it can be used as almost a weapon.
Sure.
Because, you know, biological and children of in a blended family, they understand their situations different. They know that, you know, maybe it's a week with mom and a week with dad, and, you know, I may like it here better, or I may like it here better, or maybe this week I want something, and maybe I know that if my parents feel guilty, I can get something.
Sure.
And it's not, I think guilt comes in, you know, it doesn't just happen in blended families. I mean, all parents have felt guilt before of like, I really shouldn't have done that, so I better do something.
Right.
But we do see it a lot in blended families, and it does manifest in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So yours was a very direct.
Yeah.
Why did this happen?
Right.
And you felt a guilt of that.
Sure.
But it can also manifest in other ways, and it can come and creep around in other ways.
Yeah.
Vanessa, what have you seen other ways that it manifests in child's behaviors?
I think when it comes to discipline, that's a big one. That's a very big one. They may say something in the moment when you're trying to discipline that refers to the divorce situation. And so you're like, ooh, I don't want to be too hard on them. They've already gone through so much. So then, you're parenting out of guilt when, that's not what we're called to do. We're, in scripture, it says, train up a child in the way they should go. And, I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, is, you get into a situation like that where you feel that guilt and then you're not, you're not parenting the way that you should.
And it's in a lot of in blended families that the pain is sometimes obvious there.
Sure.
And I think one of the important things to remember is that this child may not make you feel guilty. You may feel guilty all on your own.
Right.
You may just see pain in your child or see a situation where they're not succeeding, and then all of a sudden your gut reaction goes to, well, if I hadn't made that decision, then they wouldn't be in this situation. And that's not all the time fair, because again, not everything that happens to a child is a direct result of your decision not to be married to their biological mother or father. So that's not fair for us as a parent. But we see that, and all of a sudden, as a parent, we immediately go to guilt, and then we immediately go to overcompensate. So you talked about discipline, and we've seen that, and we've heard stories about that many times, where a child will be acting out, and because the parent feels guilty, because they feel like they wouldn't have done that had they not have been from a divorced family, so I'm not going to discipline the child that way. I'm going to overcompensate, and I'm going to go a different direction. So the child acts out, and then your reaction is to, well, let me go do something for them to put them in a better mood, to make their actions go a different direction. So let me reinforce the behavior versus parentally correcting it. And we've seen that in a lot of examples throughout the
and I think a good example, too, is depending on your possession schedule. If you're the parent that has less time with the child, you hear the term amusement park parent and Disneyland parent, and they're just going there on the weekend to have fun, and it's like, I don't get this much time with my child, and I want to make up for that time. So instead, you're providing fun experiences, whereas it might be lacking in the discipline and things like that.
So that arises from a feeling of guilt that I don't get to see the child enough, so let's overcompensate. And I think it all comes back to a biblical perspective. Guys, whether you're a blended family, a biological family, whether you have one child or 10 children, God calls us to raise our children a specific way. And that's with discipline, with love, with understanding. And we can't do that if we're operating out of a sense of guilt. I know that we looked at the scriptures, and we were kind of going, okay, how do we approach this? And what are the scriptures that talk to us when it talks about guilt? So here's one that got me, and I thought, wow, this is just powerful. And it's in Proverbs 28:13. Whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. The reason that spoke to me, and I think as we have seen our children as they're growing up, and our Michael is 14, and he's starting to understand things a little bit better. I always thought, and my kind of go-to was, how often does a biological parent really ask for forgiveness from their child? We as adults and as Christians, we understand that God, Jesus, did what they did so that we could do that, so that we have the opportunity to ask for forgiveness, so we have the opportunity to live in mercy. But we don't always extend that to our human relationships, especially our children relationships. So it created an opportunity in my mind that if you are in that situation and maybe you're feeling guilt and maybe you're feeling responsibility for that, wouldn't it be awesome to have that mercy and to ask for that mercy? And I think it's such a powerful thing to do as parents, that if you can go to your child or children and say, guys, I didn't make the right decisions here. We did not make all the right decisions, and I am so sorry that affected you. Will you please forgive me for that action? And watch the walls tumble and watch the guilt and the shame and the pain tumble, because that action and reaction is what creates a healthy path.
Absolutely. And, guilt comes from the accuser. Guilt is something that is not of God. It's from the enemy. And so when you can do exactly what you were just talking about, it pushes back the walls of hell. It pushes back that darkness that the enemy tries to throw at us or, come against us and our children. And so when you were talking about scripture, Scott, I had was just doing a little bit of research, and I was in Revelation, and this scripture jumped out at me, and I just wanted to share it and just dive a little deeper into it. But it was Revelation 12:10, and it says, "And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, 'Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, for they love not their lives even unto death.'" And so, you and I were talking about, what are some things that we can do or some steps that we can take to break off that guilt. And I love this verse because it tells you where that comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from the accuser. And what are some of the things that we can do to help break off that shame?
Yeah.
We can, one, remember we are covered by the blood of the Lamb. Jesus bore every wrong on the cross so that we could walk in freedom, so that we could live free, out of bondage, no strongholds, free. And then it says the words of our testimony. That is so powerful, because when we can share our testimony, when we can talk it out with God, when we can pray it out with God, and then walk it out with God.
Yeah.
When we can do those things, we can live a life of freedom and then not operate out of a place of guilt.
I love it. And it makes it sound, I'm going to use the word simple.
Yeah.
But it needs to be reinforced, guys.
Yeah.
Guilt is brought on by the enemy. It is not a feeling of God. It is not one that he gives you. And he's definitely not one that he wants to insert between the relationship you have with your children.
Yeah.
So when you feel that, understand that that's not coming from God. That is definitely coming from the enemy. And then understand that the answer has already been completed.
Right.
There is atonement, there is forgiveness, there are ways that you can walk in that step as you can heal that relationship and create it. Because guilt really has no place in that relationship.
Right.
And it's not something, again, that you want to fester on over time. So you as a person, you as a biological parent, we know that you feel this. We know that you feel the guilt of decisions. And you may be thinking, well, they weren't my decisions.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't make those decisions. But nevertheless, you were a part of the situation, and the child puts that back on you, or you put it on yourself to feel guilty. So we want to leave you with this. First of all, these are things that are going to come up from time to time. So you may not win at this every day.
Yeah.
This is just not something that is going to pop its head up once and then never come back.
Sure.
So you'll see it over and over, and
Yeah.
it will manifest as the age of your child increases. So you'll see this daily. You may not win at this every day. But I will tell you this. There's going to be a point in your child's life when you're going to have an opportunity to look them in the eye and basically confess what had happened and ask for forgiveness and start a healing process with them over the damage that has been done. And I hope that you understand that that's going to be an amazing moment in your relationship. I hope you understand that it's going to be a moment that only God could create, and that God will see you through that. So please understand that that time is coming. Be patient. Pray for that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Continue to pray for that opportunity.
Yeah.
And it will happen.
Absolutely. Luke 6:38 says, "Given it will be given to you, good measure pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap." And I think that right there just says the measure in which you use it is the measure in which you will receive it. So if we're operating out of a place of guilt with our children, that's what we're going to receive back. But whenever we can, not do that and operate out of a place of love and, sound mind and peace and joy, then that's going to be the fruit that's going to be produced in our children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guys, one last thing. If you're in that situation and you're thinking the mountain is too big, the damage is too great, my action was too insanely obvious, and I don't know if that is possible. I just, as I was looking over your shoulder, I saw our verse. And I think the earthly challenges that we've put in here really relate to our relationships. Yeah. How repairable is this relationship, and can we get to a good place? And I just want to remind you, if you're putting God at the center of that question, and you're putting him at the center of the solution, everything is possible.
Absolutely.
There is no situation, I don't care what you're facing, or how damaged or how broken the relationship is, that cannot be repaired and restored.
Absolutely.
So, guys, we thank you so much for being with us today. This is an amazing topic. Please take an opportunity to share this video if you'd like. Scott and Vanessa Martindale, Blended Kingdom Families, y'all have a great day.
Be blessed in all you do. That was really good. Boom, boom.
Hey BKF community, we want to hear from you guys. If you would take the time to leave us a review, and you can find us on all social media platforms. Our podcast is like on every podcast platform, and you can visit us at our website at www.blendedkingdomfamilies.com.
Yeah, guys, we're trying to reach every blended family all over the world, and we can't do this without your partnership. So please take a minute, like, share, comment, review, tell your friends. Tell them they can all go to blendedkingdomfamilies.com for great resources.